have some more fan questions, and this is just the place where we answer them. So let's get to it.
Maserati asks, what evokes emotions for Xai Alpha? If it's in tandem with me, those can be all the invisible and seemingly unnoticeable vibrations of the environment that could summon it, such as suddenly becoming sad, and in this way, the Xai user might not even know what made him or her sad. For V tandem, it can be all the literal stimulus in the environment, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Xai Alpha, as towers, they're actually picking up on signals from the environment. So the type of signals or information that they'll be picking up from the environment will depend on the tandem power or the tandem perception power that the Xai Alpha has, either Xai'nyy or V. If the Xai Alpha has Xai'nyy, so they would be the Xai'nyy, they'll be picking up on idea pattern-based information from the environment, whereas the Xai'vyy, that have the tandem perception power of V, will be picking up on the sensory, literal information coming from the environment. A way to illustrate the difference between how the Xai'nyy and Xai'vyy pick up on information would be how they would perceive politeness versus rudeness in coming into a situation or engagement in the environment. For Xai'vyy, coming into an engagement, the way they would perceive whether they were being taken care of or not in the environment would deal with the visceral, the physical needs of the Xai'vyy, like whether someone, whether they had a place to sit, whether they were given food, whether the temperature was too hot or too cold where they were at, and someone didn't seem to care about, how they felt about it. That would really influence the way they would perceive the engagement as far as whether it was pleasant or not. Whereas the Xai'nyy, the way they would perceive pleasant, polite versus rude, pleasant versus not, would have to do with more of the psychological, the ideas that were coming into their tower. For example, whether, in the conversations, whether someone was being rude or not, like if there were topics or ideas that were being discussed that were in conflict with what the Xai'nyy, grooved with, or if someone was, shut off one of their ideas. So it would be more psychologically based, and that would really affect the perception of a pleasant evening versus a not pleasant evening for a Xai'nyy. Of course, this is just a basic way of understanding this, because the Xai'nyy has Xai'vyy as their offside power, and the Xai'vyy has Xai'nyy as their offside power. So there's a lot more, of an understanding that you can have on it. There are a lot more layers that we can go into, and we will. Maserati has another question. Speaking of the vibe position in the psyche, does that mean that everybody could have a photographic memory, Xai'vyy, just that every Mojo would need a different path in order to achieve it?
Potentially, yes. That's exactly how it is. Everyone has a different pathway to get there. For an interpretive, for example, their Xai'vyy is naturally going to be a bit more impressionistic, meaning the Xai'vyy, the purpose it serves, is more effectively used as in a way that's kind of been crafted by the higher powers. So it kind of encodes, for example, with me, Xai with Xai'nyy, or even Xai with Xai'nyy, or Xai'nyy with Xai, or Xai'nyy with Xai. But for example, my Xai'vyy is most effectively used and then accessed by committing principles to it. Instead of just taking in raw Xai'vyy, like, just something completely memorized, then you take principles and actually explain it in a Xai'vyy language. So for me, and with other interpretives, it's you need to begin to develop some synonymy when you start to touch up on it. And when you want to touch up on it down to exact details, you need to really be dumping in synonymy into there. So kind of encoding Xai'vyy with Xai principles is the more effective use. It's kind of what you end up with if you take with synonymy. Kind of like how when you record music digitally, then you're not actually recording the music, you're recording the code that's going to reconstruct it later. And so for me, with Xai, then I'm recording Xai and Nyy, so like a big concept packaged in a like really small Xai or Vi symbol of some kind. And then when you construct like an alphabet of all that, then all of those, all of that Vi that you've committed explodes into Nyy packets. For the Xai Alpha, or and lesser extent other Vi mojos, the Vi begins by actually committing just raw Vi. You know, it's not refined Vi like it would be for myself or other interpretives, refined by the higher powers, but just raw. And you know, it takes it in. The Vi gets bigger, then locks onto that, gets bigger, and it kind of just keeps on building into it. And Xai'nyy for them though is also a refinement of the Vi, because if you try and pull Vi into, let's say for a Xai'vyy, you know, take Vi, pull it into Xi, pull it into Xai, pull it into Nyy, you're shaving off almost everything except natural law. So even for them, the Vi begins raw, but to actually get into the nuance of it, they have to connect them. They have to cross-contextualize it. So even for them, Xai'nyy has to actually come in to get a really perfectly refined byproduct.
Maserati asks a follow-up question. His question is, how does Vi work for an IG? Does there need to be a serious blast of energy from the Nyy in order to do it? For a Vi user in a conscious, with it in its conscious, it might be more easily achievable, but there still need to be the right rituals done in order to access that Vi. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. The thing is that for a Nyy mojo, any four of the Nyy mojos, in order to get to Vi, that's the furthest of their perceptions. So there needs to be a huge surge from Nyy to make that worthwhile. So for example, in order to find that interesting, you would need to shave off everything of lesser importance. Going off of what Adima said earlier about Vi users, for those who are Nyy mojos, it would be even more extreme, because if you are a Nyy mojo, then that means Vi is very far down, so it'll take a lot of percolating and trickling down before you would get to where that would be important. But you can get yourself very, very excited about something to where that seems interesting. There's another element though. Say Adimas or Xai'nyy, they have Vi, or Nisha, they have Vi in a further position, but it is conscious. So they can reach for it in the way that Adimas described. For myself, being a Nyy mojo, I have to kind of dialogue to get it. So that infusion of memory comes from my other, which is a Nijai, and even my other has Vi as the fourth power in the unconscious. So there's a need to get that person very interested. So for example, if I find a subject very interesting, I can talk to my other and see if she is finding the research I'm doing interesting. If so, I'll know, because I'll first of all get a huge influx of Nyy energy. I'll feel very buoyant, very excited, almost manic. And then Xai, like, ooh, this is good. Oh, this is really, really good for me. And then I'll get excited with the Z of like, she's kind of giving it to me from the unconscious, like what that could be. And then the Vi comes out, which is, we have to remember this and this and this. So it comes from a frenzy of activity. And for me, I have to generate a large amount of psychic activity to initiate my other in the unconscious, to get her attention and begin the dialogue. But then she would need to get, my conscious to get very excited in order to go down to the Vi. But it can be done, and Nyy mojos tend to actually do this fairly regularly, high-level Xai'nyy, because they have to. A few wrinkles to throw in there. One is that having Nyy, you also have V, and you specifically mentioned the term photographic memory, and both Vi and V can help with that. So having V, if it's attached to something else, like Adima said, something that's important, I'm a Nyy Xi, so V that's associated with Xi. So I smell a certain fragrance, and maybe that actually reminds me of a certain dinner I had somewhere or experience that was very moving to me, and I was affected deeply. That can bring into me quickly like a strong V. That's a form of memory in a way. It's different than Vi though. It's more like it arrests you and grabs a hold of your psyche like you're reliving it. So it's not so much recollecting as reliving. And since you're talking about memory and photographic memory, I feel the need to mention the aspect that V can play in that. Because both Ni and V, although they're objectively oriented, they can be pulled into the psyche. So I can take my V and enjoy the V of the environment, but I can also like, strawberry. I'm kind of like imagining strawberry with my V. There's Xai'nyy going on there with the simulator, but I'm feeding my simulator V's, I guess, visceral impressions of what tasty strawberries taste like. So that is another form, although it doesn't have that kind of like beginning, middle, end, like you're reading that of a book quality Vi does. It has more like you're living it. Another wrinkle, which is important to note for all the Xai'nyy Mojos, is they are directive, and therefore they care about winning engagements, particularly about their competence or their ability or their ability in order to carry out their role, whatever they feel that may be. So when this happens, it's important to note the way Xai'nyy works, because it can often approximate what Vi does, but it takes a very different route, and it can be more fatiguing in some ways, but it can also be more formidable in other ways. So for example, I think a classic way of explaining this might be Sherlock Holmes. He's a classic Xai Alpha character. We can debate if he's Xai'nyy or Xai'vyy, but he's Xai Alpha. So and normally I don't actually go into the mojos of characters as much as I do real humans, because I don't think this is relevant, but in the case of Sherlock Holmes, they go into such great length explaining his mental process. It very much lays out a Xai Alpha's way of looking at the universe. And something he says to his friend Watson, because, well actually not, I don't think he says it to him, I think Watson is actually kind of describing his friend. And he's describing his intellectual formidability, particularly in the terms of Vi, since you mentioned it. Vi and a little Z as well, which is that Sherlock Holmes would learn particular sections of very high-level books. And these sections could be of chemistry, they could be of other kind of pathologies, they can be of linguistics, explosions, all kinds of topics interested him, but only the parts that helped him solve his Xai'nyy cases, which were criminal cases. So he was creating a new form, a new model for solving cases. He took bits and pieces from many different things he read and put them together. And the thing that Watson commented on was, on those particular details that were constellated, they're basically like a series of details from a chemistry book, a series of details from an anatomy book, many high-level books, but only certain pieces. On those pieces, connected together in an original crime-solving model that he created, he was unbeatable. He could solve any case, and not just that, he could debate with often sort of Vi law enforcement officers. And he could debate on the facts of the case, which could seem almost like he is out Vi Alpha, the Vi Alpha. He's not, he's using Xai'nyy, which is, he has constellated all the relevant points to this unique, unprecedented way of operating. But here's what Watson notes. If you were to ask him about almost any of the other content in those books, he couldn't help you. In fact, outside of that scope, his psyche didn't have interest. And here was Sherlock Holmes' explanation for this. The mind is finite. Probably sure it is, being an Xai Alpha as far as memory goes, but you only have so much you can dedicate to any one thing, such as solving a case, and so you have to ask yourself what you want to use that memory for. So this is very important because, as Ademus mentioned, Vi, when it's higher up in the hierarchy, has a consistent quality. But there's a difference between that and being strong with details, because Xai Alpha can be incredibly dominant with details because they'll have collected all the ones that are relevant for constellating their case, which they think they have a better angle than someone else does. They see an angle. So if you're engaging, a Xai Alpha, for example, will know that this detail point is important. And its Xai will focus on that one, not the rest of the details. It doesn't hold on to details in general. So for example, if you ask an Xai Alpha to go for a kill shot memory, a lot of times they can do that, particularly if it's in anything they kensei on. They will have gotten the V and the Vi of that if they kensei. If you ask for, like, for example, what did you do here or there? What happened, this and that? And it's pretty much just ask them to reach into a sea of details and pick out something that has just now become relevant. That's important. Going back to what Demas said, generally the details that a Xai Alpha or Xai Mojo hold on to will have significance already. They don't hold on to details that may get significant. Generally, they look over details and certain ones pop out. This is how interpreters work. They pop out as the important details. So on collecting a constellation of important details and implementing it, for example, in a debate or solving a case, Xai Alpha are very good at constellating all these supremely important details that would actually explain what's going on and give you the inside angle. But what you would consider to be rather mundane uses of Vi are extremely difficult, sometimes impossible for Xai Mojos, particularly Xai Alpha, such as keeping consistency all the time. And again, a lot of Xai Mojos, particularly say Xai Alpha, they can become very, actually all Xai Mojos can become very fastidious about the details of their global project. And so if you were to ask them, are you good with details? They're like, fuck yeah I am. You want to challenge me on it? You'll lose. And that's their attitude, and they're not even wrong a lot of times. The issue is keeping that same kind of detail consistency with all activities. The higher Vi is in your hierarchy, the more you're able to do that with everything. The further abilities get away from you, the more fetishy they get. For a Xai Alpha, Vi is the absolute furthest. It's deep, deep in the unconscious. So if you're fetishing on it, there will be actually sometimes a like crazy focus on it, kind of like an investigator who hears like Rosebud or something. They will remember that because that's the name, kind of like Memento. Nizy Guy Pearce, the character in there, he's trying to remember. He writes, that's him vying. He won't forget that shit because Xai Alpha will actually go to extreme lengths to make sure that the details of their case they never forget. They'll embed it in themselves if they have to. But everything else, classic Xai Alpha being a detective, details of the rest of life, not relevant to me. Going with Sherlock Holmes, the headspace, particularly Xai Alpha, is dedicated only to details that will help solve Xai cases. And this gets into the memory. If you can convince your psyche that this is an important case and that detail is essential to solving that important case, you'll find your Xai'nyy will do high-level spells in order to hold on to those, even at the expense of jettisoning other ones. If it needs to, Xai Mojos will jettison memory, which most people consider to be null memory. You wouldn't jettison that. Xai Mojos will, unconsciously even, not even trying to do it, they just will, trying to actually, for example, get their head around a big Xai model. As they try to get that big Xai model and their detail, get tired. More power to this. When they ask for more power to finish out the model, they're dropping in the memory. They're making that choice consciously or unconsciously that they need to get the details to fill in that circle of that Xai model, and other details, well, they get in line.
Hope this answers your questions, Maserati, and if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to ask them. And if anyone out there has any questions for us, feel free to send them through email to us, podlair@yahoo.com, or through our YouTube account.